Lena woke up to the soft light of morning streaming through her bedroom window. The birds were chirping and the world outside seemed calm and ordinary, the kind of quiet that made her feel safe and grounded. She stretched, listening to the familiar sounds of her home, Rex moving softly across the floor, the gentle hum of her refrigerator, the occasional distant car passing by. Rex, her German shepherd, padded over and nudged her hand with his nose, tail wagging lightly as if to say, "Good morning." She smiled, scratching behind his ears, feeling that familiar comfort that came from having him around. Life had taught Lena to value small moments of peace like this. She lived alone in a quiet suburban neighborhood, a place that most people might consider ordinary or even boring. But to her, it was home. She worked hard, managing her own business from home, and took pride in her independence. She was a woman who knew her own mind, who had faced challenges and grown stronger because of them. And she had Rex, who was more than a pet. He was her protector, her companion, her constant friend. The morning routine was simple but comforting. Lena made a cup of coffee, fed Rex, and moved around the house, tidying up little things here and there. She liked order. It gave her a sense of control in a world that could sometimes feel unpredictable. Rex followed her everywhere, watching her carefully, ears perked, tail wagging, ready to respond if anything seemed unusual. Their bond was more than companionship. It was trust, loyalty, and an unspoken understanding that they looked out for each other. As Lena moved about the house, she thought about her plans for the day. She had errands to run, bills to pay, and a few calls scheduled with clients. But more than that, she planned to enjoy the little things. Maybe a walk in the park with Rex, a moment to breathe and watch the world go by. She cherished these small joys, the ones that made her feel alive and at peace. Little did she know this ordinary morning would soon take a dangerous turn. A short distance away, a small group of men were plotting. They were known locally as a gang, the kind who preyed on people they assumed were weak or defenseless. They didn't care about right or wrong, and their motives were tangled in arrogance and hate. They had heard about a black woman living alone in this quiet neighborhood, and in their twisted minds they saw an easy target. They laughed among themselves, joking about how simple it would be to get in, take what they wanted, and leave without facing any trouble. Their confidence was thick, their ignorance absolute. They didn't know Lena, and they certainly didn't know Rex. Lena, completely unaware of the danger creeping closer, stepped outside for a quick walk. She clipped Rex's leash on, and he immediately walked beside her, sniffing the air, alert to the usual morning scents and sounds. There was a rhythm to their walk, a comfort in knowing each step was shared. The sunlight warmed their skin and fur, and for a moment everything seemed peaceful and ordinary. But Rex's instincts were sharper than hers. He sensed tension, something out of the ordinary, something dangerous. His ears twitched, his nose moved, and his body stiffened slightly. Lena noticed, pausing for a moment. "What is it, boy?" she asked softly, but Rex only looked around, eyes alert, as if warning her without words. Meanwhile, the gang had parked a short distance from her house. They moved cautiously, but not quietly enough to avoid detection. Their steps were calculated but fueled by arrogance. They believed they were untouchable, that no one could stop them. One of them nudged a window, checking for locks, while another tried the back door handle. They were confident, laughing at the idea that they might encounter resistance. They had underestimated the one thing that would make all the difference: Lena's intelligence and Rex's unwavering loyalty. Back on the sidewalk, Lena and Rex walked steadily, unaware of the proximity of the danger. She had a sense of calm, the kind that comes from experience and self-reliance. She had faced challenges before and had learned to trust her instincts as well as Rex's. The bond between them wasn't just companionship, it was a partnership, built on years of understanding and loyalty. Rex was always aware, always alert, and today his instincts were sharper than ever. The gang tried to approach the house quietly, thinking they could enter without being noticed. But Rex had already picked up on them. His growl was low at first, a subtle warning, and then it grew louder, more insistent, echoing across the quiet morning. The men froze, thinking it was just a neighborhood dog being territorial. They laughed nervously, thinking a growl could be ignored. But Rex's bark was sharp, controlled, and intelligent. It wasn't just noise. It was a warning, a declaration that they were not welcome here. They tried to push open the window, confident that brute force would work. But Rex was ready. He lunged, barking, moving with precision, blocking their path. The gang stumbled back, startled by the dog's sudden aggression. They hadn't expected resistance, and certainly not from a dog who was so alert and coordinated. Rex moved between them and the door, snapping in the air, letting them know clearly that any attempt to enter would be met with immediate opposition. Lena's sense of unease grew as she walked back toward the house. Rex's behavior was unusual, more intense than normal. He barked, circled, and growled, his eyes fixed on the house with unwavering focus. She picked up the pace, realizing that something was wrong. Her instincts, honed over years of living alone and handling challenges, told her to be cautious. She quickened her steps, scanning the street and the surroundings. The gang tried again, ignoring Rex's warning. One man grabbed a crowbar from the car, thinking they could force the door open. But Rex anticipated every movement, barking, lunging, and positioning himself strategically. The men were no longer confident. Frustration and fear were creeping in. They whispered among themselves, trying to figure out how to proceed. But every attempt was thwarted by the dog's loyalty and intelligence. Rex's growls drew attention from the neighbors. Curtains twitched and some doors opened slightly. People were curious, sensing tension, but cautious about getting involved. Lena finally reached the driveway, her heart racing, realizing what was happening. She saw the men, saw Rex blocking them, and understood immediately that they were trying to break into her home. She felt a surge of calm determination. This was her house, her life, and her responsibility. She would not allow them to intimidate her. The gang, seeing her approach, froze. Their arrogance faltered. They had assumed a lone woman would be easy to scare, that a dog would be no challenge, but Lena's calm presence and Rex's vigilance were more than they had anticipated. Panic began to replace confidence. They whispered nervously, trying to decide what to do next, but hesitation cost them. Every second counted, and Rex ensured they were aware of the consequences of moving too quickly. Lena's eyes scanned the situation. She had always trusted Rex's instincts, and now she understood how dangerous it could be for anyone who underestimated him. She took a deep breath, ready to act if necessary. She wasn't looking for confrontation, but she was prepared to protect herself and her home. The bond between her and Rex had always been their strength, and today, that bond would prove crucial. The gang took a step forward, trying to push past Rex, but he anticipated it immediately, barking sharply and positioning his body to block them. The men froze again, realizing that this was not an ordinary dog, and Lena was not an ordinary woman. The calm authority she radiated, combined with Rex's loyalty and intelligence, created a barrier they could not overcome. Their confidence was crumbling, replaced by fear and frustration. Lena's voice cut through the tension. "Leave my property," she said firmly. Her tone was calm but carried undeniable authority. The gang exchanged nervous glances. They had expected fear, but they hadn't expected courage. They hadn't expected intelligence, strategy, or a loyal companion who would not back down. Panic set in, and for the first time that morning they realized they had underestimated the wrong person. Rex barked again, a warning that any further move would be met with resistance. Lena stayed calm, assessing the situation, ready to act if necessary. The gang's arrogance was gone, replaced by confusion and fear. They were not in control, and they knew it. Lena's calmness, her presence, and Rex's loyalty had created a situation they were not prepared for. As Lena approached the house, she could see the tension on their faces. They were thinking about retreat, about fleeing, about how quickly their plan had unraveled. Rex stayed alert, following every movement, ensuring that no sudden action could be taken without consequence. Lena felt a surge of pride, not in aggression but in the calm intelligence that had guided her through years of challenges. Today that intelligence would make all the difference. She stopped at the door, holding her position, and watched as the gang hesitated. Every instinct told her to stay calm, to use her presence and authority to maintain control. Rex stood firm beside her, a silent partner, alert and ready. The situation was tense, but Lena knew that they had the advantage. Courage, loyalty, and intelligence were on her side. The day started like any other. Lena had spent the morning cleaning the house, straightening things, and making sure everything was in its place. She loved having her space neat, not for anyone else but for herself. Her dog Rex followed her from room to room, his tail wagging, ears perked, and eyes watching every movement she made. There was a sense of calm and routine in their home, a rhythm that made her feel safe and grounded. Outside, the sun was warm, Birds chirped, and it was easy to forget that trouble could ever come knocking at her door. Meanwhile, not far away, a small group of men were preparing themselves. They were a gang, known locally for targeting people they thought they could intimidate or rob. Their reasons were twisted, but for them it was just business, or at least that's how they justified it. They had heard about Lena, or more specifically, they had heard about a black woman who lived alone in a quiet part of town. They assumed she was an easy target. Their arrogance was thick. They laughed amongst themselves as they talked about how simple it would be to get in, take what they wanted, and leave without a single problem. They had no idea what they were walking into. Lena, oblivious to their plan, decided to run to the grocery store to pick up a few things for the week. She grabbed her reusable bag, Rex trotting alongside her, tail wagging in his usual cheerful way. As they left, Rex sniffed the air cautiously, picking up scents and sounds that Lena could not notice. It was nothing out of the ordinary for him to be alert, but there was a slight tension in his movements, a feeling that he was ready to act if something seemed off. Back at the house, the gang had parked a short distance away and approached with confidence. They moved quietly at first, trying to be sneaky, but there was something careless in the way they whispered, their eyes darting around as if daring anyone to notice. One of them nudged a window, checking for locks, while another tried the back door handle. To their shock, the back door resisted. They exchanged glances, muttering under their breath, irritated that it wasn't as easy as they thought. Inside, Rex had noticed them immediately. His ears perked up sharply, his growl low and warning. The first time one of the men tried the window, he barked a sharp, commanding bark that echoed through the quiet neighborhood. The men froze for a second, thinking it was a neighborhood dog just being protective. But Rex didn't stop. He moved closer to the window, growling more intensely, letting them know that this was not a dog that could be ignored. The gang laughed nervously. "It's just a dog," one said. "She can't control it all the time." But Rex was different. He was not just any dog. He had been with Lena for years, trained not only to be a loyal companion but also to protect her with intelligence and courage. They didn't know that, of course. To them, it was just a growling animal in the way of an easy plan. They tried to push the window open, but Rex lunged toward them with a force that startled them. His teeth didn't touch anyone, but the sound of his growl, the sharp snap of his jaws in the air, made the gang step back. They weren't expecting resistance from a dog, especially one so fearless and smart. One man stumbled over a flower pot, cursing under his breath. Rex used that moment to move, circling, blocking the door, and watching every movement with precision. As the gang regrouped, they tried another approach, thinking maybe brute force would work. One of them grabbed a crowbar from the car, ready to pry open the door. But Rex was quick. He barked, jumped, and positioned himself in front of the door, his stance firm, his eyes locked on the intruders. He wasn't just reacting. He was strategizing in his own animal way. Every step he took, every bark he let out, made the gang second-guess themselves. Their confidence was starting to crack. Lena at the grocery store had a strange feeling. She always trusted Rex's instincts. Something was off, she thought. He hadn't barked for a while on their walk, but now he was acting uneasy. She quickened her pace, finishing her shopping faster than planned, her mind wandering with worry. As she drove back, her phone buzzed with a text from a neighbor. "Hey, your dog seems really upset. Everything okay?" It was enough to make her stomach tighten. She knew something was happening at home. Back at the house, the gang was getting frustrated. They were used to people panicking, used to houses being unguarded and easy to enter. They didn't understand that they were dealing with someone who wasn't ordinary, someone who had a loyal companion ready to protect her at all costs. They tried to calm each other, whispering about how simple it would be to grab a few things quickly, but every move was met with Rex's alert presence. He was barking strategically, running from window to door, making it impossible for them to predict his next move. In their arrogance, they underestimated him, assuming that a dog could be distracted or scared. But Rex was devoted, trained not just by obedience but by loyalty and love. He understood his role in protecting Lena, and he executed it flawlessly. Every attempt the gang made to force entry was met with resistance. Every step closer to the house was met with a challenge. Their frustration grew, and the first signs of panic started to show. The neighbors began noticing unusual activity. A loud bark, the sound of something heavy being knocked over, voices raised in irritation and alarm. Some peeked through curtains trying to see what was happening. One elderly woman grabbed her phone to call the authorities, sensing that the commotion was more serious than just neighborhood kids messing around. Rex's persistence was drawing attention, turning what they thought would be a quick and easy crime into a situation spiraling out of their control. Lena's heart pounded as she pulled into her driveway. She saw Rex pacing in the yard, barking and growling at the front door. Her eyes quickly scanned the scene, noticing the men who were trying to escape notice her. In that moment, she understood everything. Her mind raced but stayed calm. She knew she had to act smart, not impulsively. Her dog had already bought her some time, and she had to capitalize on it. The gang spotted her car and froze. Their plan, simple and confident just moments ago, was falling apart. They didn't expect her to return so soon. They whispered hurriedly among themselves, trying to decide what to do. But Rex didn't give them a second to think. He barked louder, positioned himself between them and the door, and didn't back down. Lena stepped out of her car, calling out to them in a strong, firm voice. "Stop right there." Her tone was calm, but there was a clear edge to it. She wasn't shouting in panic. She was asserting control. The gang's arrogance faltered even more. They had assumed fear would greet them, not courage. They didn't understand the bond between Lena and Rex, or the intelligence behind her quiet confidence. Rex continued to growl, his body tense, ready to react instantly if anyone made a sudden move. The gang tried to bluff, hoping she would back down, but Lena didn't flinch. She had always known the value of standing her ground, and now, backed by her loyal dog, she had the upper hand. Her eyes were sharp, scanning every movement, ready to respond, but also aware that this confrontation required patience. The men started to reconsider their actions. Panic was creeping in. What they had thought would be easy money and a quick thrill was turning into a nightmare. Every step forward was met with resistance from Rex. Every glance from Lena reminded them they were not dealing with someone ordinary. The neighborhood was starting to watch, and their time was running out. Lena took a deep breath, steadying herself. She knew she had to be strategic. Rex had already shown his loyalty and bravery. Now it was time for her to use her presence, her voice, and her calm mind to ensure they didn't hurt her or anyone else. She had learned in life that courage wasn't always loud or violent. Sometimes it was patience, awareness, and the confidence to act at the right moment. The gang's frustration reached a peak. They yelled at Rex, tried to intimidate him, but he didn't move. He was a wall, loyal and fierce. Lena stepped closer, using her voice to assert authority. "Leave. Now." The words were simple, but they carried power. They weren't empty threats. They were backed by action, by intelligence, by a dog who would not let them harm her. For a moment, the gang hesitated. They looked at each other, fear and disbelief showing on their faces. Their plan had failed before it even began. They realized they had underestimated Lena and her companion. She wasn't the easy target they had imagined. They were dealing with someone who understood strategy, loyalty, and courage in ways they could not comprehend. By the time Lena moved towards the phone to call for help, the gang had already started retreating. But Rex was ready. He followed them, keeping them in check, making sure they didn't escape easily. The sound of sirens in the distance reassured Lena that help was on the way. Her calm demeanor, paired with Rex's fidelity and intelligence, had bought enough time for the authorities to respond. In those tense moments, Lena realized something important. Courage and loyalty were powerful forces. Not everyone could be underestimated, and not every plan could succeed against someone who had both intelligence and devotion on their side. Rex was more than a dog. He was a partner, a protector, and a reminder that love and loyalty often outweighed violence and arrogance. As the sirens grew closer, Lena stayed calm, keeping her eyes on the retreating gang. She knew that the danger was not over, but she also knew that they had already lost control. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate someone who stands firm, and never underestimate the power of loyalty, especially when it came in the form of a faithful dog who would do anything to protect the person he loved. Lena could feel her heart pounding, but her mind was sharp. The moment she had feared was unfolding, yet she refused to panic. Her eyes scanned every corner of her yard, every shadow where someone might be hiding. Rex, her loyal German shepherd, stood firm beside her, his body tense, muscles coiled, ready to spring into action at the first sign of danger. His eyes never left the men who were trying to escape. They were tense now, uncertain, realizing their plan had completely failed. They hadn't expected her to come home early, and they certainly hadn't expected a dog like Rex, who was more than a pet. He was a partner, a protector, and a force to be reckoned with. The gang's faces showed a mix of shock and fear. Their earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by a creeping realization that they had underestimated Lena in every possible way. One of them muttered something under his breath, but no one was listening to him. Their focus was entirely on the woman standing in front of them, calm, composed, and clearly in control, and on the massive dog who moved with intelligence and precision, blocking every potential escape. Lena's voice cut through the tension. "You need to leave now." There was no yelling, no threats, only authority. The words were simple, but the power behind them was undeniable. The gang hesitated. They were not used to being confronted like this, and they certainly weren't used to seeing someone defend themselves so calmly and confidently. Their plan to intimidate her had backfired, leaving them vulnerable and exposed. Rex growled low in his throat, the sound vibrating in the quiet neighborhood. The growl wasn't just a warning. It was a statement. He was protecting Lena, and he made it clear that anyone who got too close would regret it. The gang took a small step back, trying to figure out what to do next. One of them, the one holding a crowbar, raised it slightly, thinking maybe brute force would still work. But Rex moved closer, growling and snapping, showing them that any sudden move would be met with immediate resistance. Lena noticed the hesitation. She took a steadying breath, thinking carefully about her next move. She had always believed in staying calm under pressure, and now that belief was paying off. "I'm not going to call the police if you leave quietly," she said, her tone still calm but firm. "I don't want anyone to get hurt, but I will protect myself." The men looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. There was no fear in her eyes, only determination. They realized she wasn't bluffing. One of the gang members tried to step forward, thinking maybe they could push past Rex, but the dog anticipated the move instantly. He barked, lunged, and positioned himself between the man and Lena. The man froze, unsure how to proceed. Every instinct told him to fight, but every signal from Rex told him to retreat. The tension was thick, almost suffocating, as if the air itself was waiting for the next move. Neighbors had started noticing the commotion. Curtains twitched, doors opened slightly, and some cautious voices called out from a distance, asking if everyone was okay. Lena didn't want the men to panic and lash out, but she also needed witnesses to know what was happening. She spoke again, this time louder so that anyone nearby could hear. "Leave my property now or you'll answer for it. You have a chance to make the right choice." Her words carried weight, and the gang realized that whatever small advantage they thought they had was gone. Rex stayed close to her side, moving in a protective circle. He wasn't just reacting. He was thinking, reacting with instinct and intelligence. The way he moved, the way he positioned himself made it impossible for the gang to approach Lena without risking confrontation. They glanced at each other nervously, understanding that they were no longer in control. Fear had replaced arrogance, and desperation was beginning to take over. The man with the crowbar muttered something about leaving, but another insisted on trying to take something from the house before they ran. That was the moment Lena decided it was time to assert herself more directly. She stepped forward, her voice carrying authority. "I said leave now. You have one chance." Her eyes were steady, her posture strong. She was calm, but every inch of her said that she would not back down. Rex growled in agreement, a deep, menacing sound that vibrated through the air. The gang flinched. They had dealt with dogs before, but never one like this. Never one that moved with such intelligence and loyalty. Every step they took was carefully watched, every potential path of escape or attack blocked. Lena had trained him subtly, not just with commands but with trust, and it showed now. The bond between them was clear, a partnership built on love and loyalty that the gang could neither understand nor overcome. One of the men finally decided to retreat. He took a hesitant step back, then another. The others followed, but slowly, trying to keep control. Lena didn't move, but she stayed alert, keeping her eyes on every member of the group. "Go, leave my property," she repeated. Her tone left no room for negotiation. The gang realized that continuing would only make things worse for them. Suddenly, one of the neighbors stepped outside, phone in hand. "I'm calling the police," the voice said, calm but firm. The gang panicked. Their escape route now had the added pressure of law enforcement. They hadn't planned for witnesses, hadn't planned for intervention. Their confidence shattered completely. Rex sensed their panic and moved in closer, barking and circling, making sure they didn't rush or attack in a moment of desperation. Lena stayed calm, speaking again. "You can leave now or face the consequences. The choice is yours." Her calm authority was a shield, and her loyalty to Rex made her presence even stronger. The gang hesitated, looking around nervously. They realized that leaving quietly was their only option. One by one, they backed away, trying to maintain some semblance of control, but Rex's watchful eyes followed every step. Lena stayed steady, ensuring no one tried to sneak around her. Her presence, combined with Rex's loyalty and intelligence, created a barrier the men couldn't overcome. As they reached the edge of her property, the sound of sirens grew closer. The gang's panic escalated. They started running, but Rex followed at a controlled distance, barking sharply, keeping them from gaining too much ground. Lena's calmness didn't waver. She stayed on the phone, explaining the situation clearly, giving the authorities all the information they needed. She wasn't reckless, but she was firm, and she made sure the men knew they were trapped between her and the approaching help. By the time the police arrived, the gang was already scattered, but some had been slowed down by Rex's presence. The officers quickly assessed the situation, and Lena explained calmly what had happened. Rex stood at her side, still alert, still loyal, but clearly proud of his work. The officers looked at him with admiration, realizing that without him the situation could have gone much worse. Lena reflected on what had just happened. Her courage hadn't been loud or aggressive. It had been steady, calm, and strategic. Rex had been more than a dog. He had been a partner, a protector, and a reminder that loyalty and intelligence often outweighed violence and aggression. The gang had underestimated both of them, and that mistake had cost them dearly. The neighborhood, once quiet and calm, now had a story to tell. People who had watched from windows or called for help shared what they had seen, praising Lena's courage and Rex's loyalty. It was clear that the events had left a mark, not just on the gang, but on the entire community. Lena had shown that strength often came in quiet forms, in steady courage, and in unwavering loyalty. As the police took statements and ensured the gang would face consequences, Lena patted Rex, her hand running through his fur. "We did it," she said softly. He wagged his tail, resting his head against her leg, content and proud. It was a quiet moment of triumph, a pause to acknowledge the bond that had made all the difference. She knew the danger was not over entirely, that the gang might try something in the future, but she also knew that they had learned a lesson. Never underestimate someone, and never underestimate loyalty. Rex had proven that loyalty could be fierce, intelligent, and fearless, and Lena had proven that courage could be calm, measured, and unstoppable. Together, they were a team no one could ignore, a force defined by trust, love, and an unbreakable bond that no arrogance could overcome. The sun was setting now, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood. Lena looked around, her heart still racing but steady. The danger had passed, and she had faced it with intelligence, courage, and an unwavering companion at her side. Rex lay down beside her, still alert but relaxed, knowing their bond had kept them safe. Lena smiled, realizing that bravery wasn't always about fighting. Sometimes it was about standing firm, trusting yourself, and trusting those who loved you enough to protect you. The gang had learned a lesson the hard way, but Lena had also learned something vital, that even in ordinary days, extraordinary courage could rise, and sometimes it came on four legs, with eyes that understood loyalty better than any human could. She knew that tomorrow would bring normal life back, but tonight, she would remember the quiet power that had kept her safe, the bond between a woman and her dog, a bond no arrogance could ever break. The sound of sirens was growing louder as Lena stayed close to Rex, keeping her eyes on the retreating gang. They had started running in panic, unsure which way to go, and it was clear that their earlier confidence had completely vanished. They hadn't expected her to come home early, and they certainly hadn't expected Rex to be so quick, so intelligent, and so loyal. Every step they took, Rex followed, barking sharply, making it impossible for them to get far without drawing attention. Neighbors were beginning to gather cautiously in the streets, watching the unfolding scene. Some called the police while others stayed at a safe distance, unsure of what to do but wanting to be witnesses. Lena didn't panic. She knew that the chaos around them worked in her favor. She stayed calm, moving slowly, keeping Rex between herself and the fleeing men, making sure neither she nor the dog were cornered or surprised. The gang tried to split up, hoping to confuse anyone who might be chasing them. One ran down the side street, another ducked behind a parked car, and two more sprinted across lawns thinking that distance would save them. But Rex was relentless. He didn't charge recklessly, but he stayed close, barking strategically, circling, keeping them contained, making it impossible for them to escape without being noticed. It was clear that Rex was not just protecting Lena. He was controlling the situation with intelligence and precision. Lena realized that the moment had turned into something bigger than she had expected. It wasn't just about protecting her home anymore. It was about ensuring that the gang didn't get away with their plan. She could see the fear in their eyes, the confusion, the growing panic as they realized that a dog and a woman alone could completely dismantle their plan. She took a deep breath and began moving forward cautiously, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Stop, you're surrounded. Leave now, or the police will catch you and it will be worse for you." The words seemed to hang in the air. Some of the men froze, looking around nervously, unsure which direction to go. They realized that the streets were no longer empty, that neighbors were watching, and that the police were likely on their way. One of them tried to make a dash for a car parked down the road, but Rex anticipated the move, barking and lunging in a way that made the man hesitate. Every hesitation cost them precious seconds, and Lena could see their panic growing with every step. The first police car arrived, lights flashing and sirens wailing. The officers quickly assessed the situation, spotting Lena standing firmly with Rex at her side, and the gang attempting to scatter. The officers called out to the men, ordering them to stop immediately. Some of the gang members froze, realizing that their escape route had vanished. The confidence they had arrived with was gone, replaced by fear and desperation. Lena spoke to the officers calmly, pointing out where the men had gone and explaining how the situation had unfolded. Rex stayed close, alert but controlled, watching the fleeing gang. It was clear to the officers that without Rex, the men might have gotten away. They admired the dog's loyalty and intelligence, recognizing that he had played a crucial role in keeping Lena safe and ensuring the gang didn't escape. The men ran in different directions, but their panic caused mistakes. One ran straight into the path of a neighbor who had come out to block the street, forcing him to stumble. Another tripped over a garden hose, losing valuable time. The rest were being pursued carefully by Rex, whose barking drew the attention of both neighbors and authorities. It was clear that the gang had underestimated the power of loyalty, courage, and a dog who knew how to act strategically. Lena stayed on the phone with the police, describing their movements and the direction each one had gone. She spoke calmly, giving precise details without panicking. "They went down the alley by the corner house," she said. "One of them tripped near the parked car on Elm Street. Another tried to run past the Johnsons' house. Please hurry." Every word was measured, every instruction helping the authorities respond effectively. Rex continued to follow the men, barking and positioning himself to block potential paths. He was careful not to chase recklessly, but his presence alone was enough to keep the gang from moving freely. The combination of Lena's intelligence and Rex's loyalty created a situation the gang had no control over. It was no longer just about fear. It was about understanding that every move they made was being watched and countered. The neighbors who had gathered started to help in small ways. Some used their phones to record the scene, providing evidence. Others stood at strategic points, ensuring the gang couldn't hide or escape unnoticed. Lena appreciated the support but stayed focused, keeping her attention on Rex and the men still on the run. She knew that even with help, the situation required careful handling to prevent anyone from getting hurt. The police officers began catching up with the men. One by one, the gang members were apprehended, their panic making it easy for authorities to take control. The officers quickly handcuffed them, reading their rights, and secured the scene. Lena watched, standing firm but feeling a sense of relief. The danger had passed and justice was being served, thanks in large part to Rex's unwavering loyalty and her own calm decisiveness. Rex, sensing that the immediate threat was over, finally relaxed slightly but remained alert. He stayed close to Lena, his eyes still scanning the area. She knelt down, patting him gently. "You did amazing," she said softly. Rex wagged his tail, resting his head against her leg. The bond between them had proven itself in a way that words could hardly capture. It wasn't just about protection. It was about trust, intelligence, and love that had made all the difference. The neighbors began talking among themselves, praising Lena's courage and Rex's loyalty. Some admitted they had never seen anything like it before. The story quickly spread in the community. A woman and her dog had faced down a gang and emerged unscathed, thanks to courage, intelligence, and an unbreakable bond. Lena's calmness under pressure and Rex's strategic actions became a lesson in resilience and loyalty for everyone who witnessed it. After the police had taken statements and ensured the gang would face consequences, Lena finally allowed herself to breathe. She looked around at the neighborhood still buzzing with shock and admiration, and felt a sense of accomplishment, not because she wanted recognition, but because she had protected her home, herself, and her loyal companion without anyone being harmed. Rex lay down beside her, panting lightly but clearly satisfied. Lena smiled, brushing her hand over his fur. "We made it," she whispered. She realized that bravery wasn't always loud or violent. Sometimes it was calm, measured, and strategic. Sometimes it was a partnership, built on trust and loyalty that no threat could break. As the night fell, Lena began thinking about the lessons of the day. She had faced danger, but she hadn't let fear control her actions. She had trusted Rex, and he had proven himself beyond expectation. Together, they had turned a frightening situation into a triumph of courage, intelligence, and loyalty. She knew the gang had learned a lesson the hard way. Never underestimate someone, and never underestimate the power of a loyal companion. In the quiet that followed, Lena finally felt safe. The police had taken control. The gang had been caught or scattered, and the neighborhood was returning to normal. But she knew that the events of the day would leave a lasting impression, not just on the gang, but on everyone who witnessed it. Courage and loyalty had won, and the community had seen that firsthand. Sitting on her porch with Rex at her side, Lena let the adrenaline fade, replaced by a calm sense of pride and relief. She looked down at him, knowing that their bond had grown even stronger through the ordeal. He wasn't just a dog. He was a partner, a protector, and a friend who would never let her face danger alone. The street was quiet again, but Lena knew that life could bring unexpected challenges at any moment. What mattered was the strength to face them, the wisdom to act calmly, and the loyalty to stand together. She smiled softly, patting Rex one more time. They had faced a dangerous situation and come out victorious, not through violence or anger, but through intelligence, courage, and an unbreakable bond. The neighborhood had seen it all: the fear in the gang, the loyalty of a dog, and the calm bravery of a woman who refused to be underestimated. Lena and Rex had not just defended a home. They had shown a lesson in courage and fidelity that would be remembered for a long time. As the last police car drove away, Lena took a deep breath. The danger had passed, but the lesson remained. Courage, intelligence, and loyalty were more powerful than fear, arrogance, or hate. And sometimes the quiet strength of a loyal companion could change everything. She knew she and Rex had done just that, and nothing could take away the bond and trust that had made them unbeatable that day. The quiet of the evening settled over the neighborhood like a soft blanket. But for Lena, the adrenaline from the day still lingered. She sat on her porch, Rex lying at her feet, his head resting on her shoes as if to reassure her that everything was okay. The street was calm now, and the distant flashing of police lights had faded. The gang had been caught or scattered, and Lena knew that justice had been served. But the events of the day weighed on her mind. She reflected on how quickly things had escalated, and how fragile safety could be, yet how strength and loyalty could overcome even the most unexpected threats. She looked at Rex, her loyal companion, and smiled softly. "You were incredible today," she whispered. His ears perked up slightly,